What is up, guys? Welcome back to Shank. We are going to dive into one thing and one thing only. I'm trying to keep this video pretty short. We need to talk about Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. They are, of course, in many headlines this past week. They are now 1-6 in clutch games, and of course, the demoralizing loss to Utah at home. Sure, down PJ Washington, but it was how, of course, they were toppled and all of the signs, concerns that were on display leading up to it. Thank you again for tuning in, and let's just get into it. When Klay Thompson was initially announced to be joining the Mavericks, most of the concerns for the new roster stemmed from Klay's attitude, abilities, especially on defense, and overall competitiveness. How is it going to gel alongside of Luka? How is his psychology and his psyche as far as contributing to team winning? Is he still chasing his ghost? What I think was enormously overlooked at that time was all of those things for Luka within that brand new context, given the new roster. Frankly, Luka is becoming our worst vision for what Klay could have been, might still be, on this Dallas Mavericks roster. He's stubborn, selfish, and a defensive liability. The defensive part kind of goes without saying. Of course, it came to a head in that Utah game on that last play. Luka said post-game there was a miscommunication with the bench. He thought he was going to be hitting someone and guarding some kind of pin down action or something on the sideline that was supposed to happen. It sounded like Josh Green was also in line with him, and they were both kind of burned. So it sounds like there's some blame to go around there, but everybody's aware of the consequences of a heliocentric offense and the toll that it takes on that focal point engine on the defensive end. Luka's definitely turned it up and tried to reverse that trend, particularly last year, given the team's talent and knowing that they were going to go, of course, deep in the playoffs. But again, it very clearly is still one of his biggest development areas, and defense is a lot of a mindset, which Najee Marshall, any NBA coach, and really any NBA player will tell you. The stubborn part is his relentless commitment to shooting out of his shooting slump, where he is currently under 50% field goals this year, under 32% from three, while still sporting a 94th percentile usage rate. I might add that 94th is down from the 100th percentile usage that he has literally had every single year. It follows the same playbook that he has been using all of these years, which is come out in the first quarter, find his rhythm, read the defense. How are they really going to guard me? Are they coming over the screen? Where are my passes really going to be? And I'm going to take 7 to 10 shots in the first quarter alone to establish myself and do all of those things. He is still doing that, and it is extending well into the game, matching pretty much the same shot distribution or diet across each quarter. And then, of course, famously in the clutch, regardless of Kyrie being otherworldly hot late in that Denver Nuggets game on the road, Klay Thompson sitting on 6 for 12 from three, mostly just from hit-ahead passes and off-balance transition pulls. Late in that Golden State matchup, where his whole homecoming was the story of the entire matchup, Luka is struggling to shoot the ball, but is not adjusting how he is utilizing himself and his gravity to offset the lack of efficient scoring production that he typically has. That stubbornness, compounded by the defensive liability stuff, is what leads to ultimately the selfish part here. Doing those first two things is ultimately risking and harming the team's success, not to mention the wear and tear on his own body, which clearly presents a lot of risk for later in the season as well as playoffs. What I think all of this boils down to is the broad and strategic trend in the league's evolution that heliocentric offenses are going extinct. Jason Kidd himself has said in post-game interviews, the biggest takeaway the Mavericks had from getting rocked by the Celtics in the finals is that they need more playmaking on the floor, not just as a release valve, but as a viable, continuous weapon to help their half-court offense penetrate this fortified perimeter defense in Boston and now Oklahoma City.
To get like some favorable mismatches. Just how valuable is it to have like those forwards that can handle the ball, like you talked about before?
Yeah, when you talk about Marshall's ability to handle his basketball IQ, being able to have our forwards get in the offense, PJ's another one. And so the luxury of learning what we went through in the finals last year, the more playmakers you can have on the floor, the game becomes simple and it becomes easier. And so being able to have Najee, I thought he did a great job for us tonight, getting us in our offense and being able to recognize what we were trying to do and get the matchup that we wanted offensively.
If you are running a simple, spammy, outside-in, heliocentric pick-and-roll model like Luka has traditionally done, those top teams you'll have to beat in order to win a championship will have the ability to suffocate both Luka as well as Kyrie, just like we saw, therefore necessitating other guys to be able to sustain advantages, whether it's attacking closeouts, cutting and spraying the ball, cutting and finishing, that type of stuff, which is why I very much believe in Golden State and Indiana. Both of their offensive schemes, they're both very, very similar, actually, when you think about it, because they do have that homogeneous threat level of willing outside shooters, but most importantly, that secondary playmaking or just ability to sustain those advantages once they are created. It's not just a play finisher. They are going to get a kick out, and if the shot isn't there, or there might be an opportunity to create an even better quality look, 4 or 5 of their guys at really any given moment are able to do that. This is exactly why Nico Harrison went out and acquired Klay Thompson in the first place. Klay is an incredible shooter. Yes, his innate gravity is going to unlock more spacing for Luka to attack. But in those situations, like I've been describing, he of course has that innate ability too. He doesn't just have to be a spot-up guy. He can put the ball on the floor and make secondary reads, provided more chemistry, continuity, integration of him in that offensive model, maybe some experimentation, again, with off-ball cutting. Another idea that is all the rage now, but I was freaking out and screaming about during that finals matchup. The problem here for Luka is that he has really only played a heliocentric style since joining the NBA. And it's really, really showing. Think about it. This is the best top-end talent that Luka Doncic has literally ever had in his entire life. Should we not expect his assists to naturally grow and his shot attempts to naturally regress as a direct result of that offensive influx? The continuity, just more continuity with the guys who are still there from last year's finals run. And again, because of what the lessons learned from that gobsmacking in the finals against a more balanced team in the Boston Celtics. Let me put it this way. I don't think it's ever been more the case that the Mavericks don't actually need his insane box score numbers. But what's emerging early in the season is the very clear challenge it is for Luka to relinquish his stranglehold on the offense and commanding it, despite a ton of surrounding indicators that it is probably not the best way to be proceeding. The Mavericks simply cannot afford Luka shooting his way out of a slump by taking 20-plus shots a night with meager efficiency, and then proceeding to predictably dominate every clutch time possession, especially out in the Western Conference, absolute bloodbath, and Luka clearly playing his way into shape, coming off of the Olympics and yada yada. not to mention the groin strain or issue he is clearly nursing. You don't have to run yourself into the fucking ground with the same exact high usage, high body strain model that you've always been using. You have the best collection of talent on the team that you ever had before. You're not engaging them because you're frustratingly beating your head against the wall, trying to get yourself to make more shots the same exact way. You're ensuing doubt amongst your brand new teammates on the roster because you're showcasing to them you don't trust them and would prefer to risk the team's winning in order to get your own shot back. You just got obliterated in the finals because you didn't have enough established guys who could make secondary reads and sustain advantages. You have to build habits and foster trust with the brand new guys who just joined the team to step into those roles come the playoffs when you inevitably play the Thunder or Celtics. You're not in shape, clearly banged up with that groin injury or whatever it is, not to mention your knee is just bleeding again. Oh yeah, and you now have the best top-end talent you have literally ever had in your entire life, yet you are choosing not to engage it, and that is exactly why everybody is on your ass. You cannot win using the same heliocentric offensive model that you have been so accustomed to using. Oklahoma City and Boston will be in your way to winning a championship. What sets them apart from everybody else is that they have a variety of phenomenal perimeter defenders that can suffocate you and Kyrie throughout a game, cycling through different guys and just wearing you out, and especially in crunch time. As a result, you simply have to have 3 to 4 quality facilitators to consistently penetrate this very, very fortified perimeter defense, to consistently create those advantages or sustain them in the half court, especially because you simply have to be generating quality enough looks from the outside to keep pace with the Celtics and Thunder, who are obviously very conscientious and oriented around that method of scoring. If you can't keep pace with their threes by generating good enough looks, by having multiple facilitators, what happened last finals will inevitably happen all over again. Because Kid has literally said this himself, I don't understand how there's any confusion about this. Like, having Luka become even more heliocentric is just going to wear him the fuck out, and it's going to position the Mavs to more than likely fall short in another matchup against these fortified perimeter defenses in Oklahoma City and Boston, who you're inevitably gonna have to play. Like, this is a clear point of emphasis that I'm sure Luka has had. And then last night against San Antonio, you see the shot totals and redistribution of it, and people are making jokes about this is Kyrie's team now, et cetera, et cetera. What the fuck do you expect to happen when the guy isn't shooting well and it's so predictable how many possessions and what type of possessions, like when inside of the game, he is going to dominate every single possession? Luka must take inspiration from Donovan Mitchell and this year's Cleveland Cavaliers with Kenny Atkinson as the first-year head coach. The Cavaliers are 14-0 because their superstar is clearly trusting and empowering his teammates by sharing the ball, especially in late game situations, while earning his teammates' trust by being effective in driving value while being off ball himself, not slouching on defense, and being in shape to run the floor. Obviously, really good defense leads to fast break opportunities that engage guys in other ways, particularly against good teams with good half-court offenses. Dallas has not proven it's able to use off-ball movement or deviate from its pretty inelastic half-court offensive strategies. And so having Luka be more conscientiously involving other guys, letting them co-pilot the offense, especially early on in games, gets the others just more psychologically engaged in the game, gets them in rhythm, and gets them established as offensive threats in the defensive psyche. In a vacuum, leaning away from the very strict heliocentric model is necessitated based on how the best teams in the NBA are playing and what they're capable of defensively. Compounding that is the fact that Luka has the best top-end talent on offense that he has literally ever had in his life. So leaning on his teammates, particularly when he's not shooting well or dealing with physical condition issues, just makes sense. And Kyrie's insane shooting late in that Denver Nuggets matchup, one of the close games they lost, where he scored like 10 points consecutively, is proof that Kyrie should have gotten the ball on that final possession. Klay Thompson's late tying three in that Utah Jazz loss, giving the Mavericks a chance to win the game, not to mention him sitting on 6 for 12 from three in his homecoming against Golden State, without really any set plays being given to him. A lot of his threes at that point had come from off-balance kind of relocation pull-ups, and he's still knocking a ton of these fucking shots down. Like, this is all just proof that his teammates are willing and ready to help him out. But again, we are seeing the very real psychological challenge of letting go of this heliocentric mindset that Luka has. Ultimately, I feel like this puts even more pressure on Kyrie, who I endearingly labeled as the Sherpa MVP last year for the entire league, really, sacrificing his own offensive contributions and engagement early on in these playoff games to help his team get more in rhythm, just like Luka should be doing, as well as espouting all of the things that you'd want a veteran player on a team to do, encouraging the younger guys and being super vulnerable and team first, etc. He did a phenomenal job. But now, as that older presence and this whole demonstrated leadership style, it just puts more pressure on him to help Luka wake the fuck up and realize he is actually hurting the team, wearing himself out, and probably making Klay Thompson feeling like he's part of the problem somehow, although he's clearly not. What's interesting is maybe Klay Thompson's experience being a four-time NBA champion who has had recent shooting woes. Of course, a lot of that coming from devastating injuries, but nonetheless, there was a lot of psychological concern about putting his team first in shot selection and yada yada. Maybe he can actually help Luka recognize what kind of harm he's having on the team, not just in the seeding and the wins and losses columns, but just this whole trust and morale issue. Like, how are guys really gonna feel valued and trusted when Luka is chucking all of these shots instead of engaging them while he's struggling to shoot from the floor, having these very costly defensive errors, struggling to play in shape and get out and run and engage them in the more easier methods that they would like because they're playing their asses off on defense, not to mention the groin issue that he's dealing with. Overall, the flipping of the script from the worst vision that a lot of Mavericks had of Klay Thompson coming into this new team context, stubborn, selfish, and a defensive liability, to what Luka is purporting now, I firmly believe is a microcosm of this broader trend here, is a substantial inflection point in the evolution of the NBA, which is outside-in heliocentric offense is going extinct. Like I've been saying since before the finals, what sets Boston and Oklahoma City apart is their impenetrable perimeter defense. You cannot spam the same heliocentric pick and roll actions over and over and expect to create consistent advantages, specifically the types of advantages that lead to an open three-point shot, which you need in order to keep pace with how those teams play. That is what sets them apart, and in my opinion, that is what is going to be their long-lasting impact on the NBA. Boston especially. They have elite penetration ability that can open up good quality threes to then pour it on you by leveraging pretty much everybody being a secondary playmaker or primary one, while all of those guys are also tremendous defensive talents around the perimeter as well. So they're really good at creating and making a lot of threes, while at the same time, really fucking good at stopping you from doing the same. That is how they chokehold the math game. I've been saying it forever, I apologize. But I revisit that only to say you have to be able to create or sustain advantages in a variety of ways from a variety of players in order to stand a chance. Jason Kidd himself has explicitly admitted that the Mavericks' biggest takeaway from playing the Celtics in the finals was that they simply didn't have enough playmaking on the floor to supplement Luka and Kyrie. Jrue Holiday and Derek White are going to eat you alive. Now you went out and got Klay Thompson, who could feasibly leverage his off-ball cutting to spray out for threes or sustain those advantages by attacking closeouts and making good reads. Like, this is what it takes now, and Luka is refusing to acknowledge that. Again, despite the fact that his team's front office has frankly done a tremendous job in affording him better tools and talent in which to accomplish this. It's very, very disappointing, surely, but again, I want to just highlight the broader trend and idea that's just at play here. The Luka Doncic, Trae Young, James Harden, heliocentric offensive models simply will not be tenable if your goal is to win a championship. So this had to happen anyway, even without acquiring Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, whatever. You have to start cultivating trust and developing good habits in that sense to maximize this roster come playoffs. You're nursing a groin injury, you're clearly playing into shape anyway, and oh yeah, you're shooting pretty fucking poorly from the field. Like, at a certain point, you simply have to lean more on your teammates and find ways to contribute to winning basketball without sucking so much oxygen out of the team's offense, especially in tight games. If everybody on Oklahoma City knows that you're taking the final shot in crunch time in the second round of the playoffs, let's say, you're probably not going to come out on top. So you just have to be aware of that in the first place. Not to mention, you are just going to organically deal with shooting slumps in the first place. I think that this level of inelastic psychology on display from Luka is also just scary, because it's like, yo, if you don't have it, we literally just can't afford you playing the exact same way in the Western Conference. Like, we need home court. This is a risk to our team's success. Give us opportunity to cultivate experience and trust with each other to offset when Luka is faced with really tough matchups or he's banged up, whatever it is. Like, this just makes sense. It's essential anyway. And listen, like I started out by saying, he's only really played this exact way, so I get it. But the fact that it's taking this much losing in these types of demoralizing ways speaks to my broader point. We are watching the extinction of heliocentrism in the NBA.